All right, welcome back to the Hotspot, everybody. Let's not even mess around with it. Let's just go to the wide shot right now, because you know the beauty of three people that have been working together and doing an amazing segment on real estate for the last 7 years, when we're all sitting down in the KOM couch, we're all the same height. Just let me see. If you saw the three of us out, a much different disparity if you saw us in real life. But Gina is over there. Liz is over here. I am so happy to see the both of you. Half a day. And Happy New Year.
Well,
Happy New
happy
Year.
2023.
Yeah.
It's a great start.
Welcome home, by the way, Liz.
Thank you.
You were all over the place.
Yes, definitely. And I came back with this sore throat.
Oh, no. Well, you know, I've got some throat lozenges.
Kind of sounds a little sexy, but
There you
sore
go.
throat.
Do you have any property that I might take a look? No. And okay, that's a completely different segment. But one thing, you know, that we were going to talk about, because we just passed the holiday season. Of course, Lent is coming up, if you want to think about it that way. Birthdays are year-round, obviously. Graduation after that. Is property ever gifted that commonly on Guam? Because I remember, you know, there's that one scene from one of my favorite movies, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. At the end, they actually give the newlywed couple a house.
You remember those kind of details,
Yeah,
Grace?
I have no life. I never get out. I just sit home and watch TV. So how often does that happen on Guam? You know, and we're such a familial centric society like here on Guam. How often do you actually see people giving houses, or at least the property?
Often, yeah. We see it often. I mean, we see it through, so there's two ways to receive property if it's a gift, right? Or through that mechanism. A lot of families get their properties through probate, especially if you don't plan in advance. You end up having to go to court and asking the court to give you property that essentially was meant for the family members, right?
Is that still considered a gift if you say like, oh yeah, we're gifting you a property? By the way, the judge said it's okay. No?
Well, you know, we've done segments on this because
Yeah.
we really are, we try to advocate that you plan in advance. I know it's a difficult subject, but if you don't plan in advance, your family has to go to court. But any property that I receive through a court decree or through probate, those are considered sole and separate property. So it'll come, you know, let's say my family had property and we went through court, and myself and my brothers and sisters received the property through court. I now own that property as my sole and separate property because I received it through a court decree. So that's one way to get property.
Okay, so Liz, what do you see about how frequently like this is done, or do you actually see like some parents, grandparents, you know, in-laws, as I was mentioning, actually build an entire house on an empty slate of property?
Well, deeding property on Guam is pretty common because families here, like you said, it's a familial thing. We want to give our children property. So you could do a deed of gift. And when you do the deed of gift, it's a question of, are you giving it to your son and his wife, or are you giving it to your son alone? And when you deed it, you're deeding it for love and affection. There's no monetary exchange. So when you do deed that, then it's deeded to your son alone. So again, there's Guam is community law, community property. So normally, if it's not specified, it could be considered community property.
So it's not one of those things where just because you married into the family, you automatically get half.
Not necessarily so, and it depends on how it's deeded. So as Gina put it, if it's probated and it's given to Jason Salas, and you are married, but by court decree it was given to you, it's considered sole and separate property. But if you received something and there was no specification, then if something happened to you by community property, it would go to your spouse. It's something to really think about, because sometimes marriages fail, right? And property is deeded under both names. Then it comes how to settle that. So if it's community property, you both have, even though it was given to you, you both still have claim to it through community property.
And if divorces weren't emotionally like trying enough and everything, now you got to go to the bank, you got to go to the lawyer, possibly before a judge.
Unless your spouse decides, okay, because it was your family property, I am going to quit claim my interest, so it's yours alone. And therefore, I have no interest to it. Now, Gina and I have been doing this for years, where we deal with different cases. We are not attorneys. We're actually talking about cases we've dealt with. Yesterday, I had a couple come in, and the property was only deeded to her. But because Guam is community property, it was not considered sole and separate property. So when we sell the property, husband has to sign a spousal consent to agree it's okay to sell the property. That's the catch. You do need a spousal consent from the other party.
Here's a weird hypothetical, Gina. Do you ever see any people gift a house but not the property on which it sits? Or is everything, it's assumed
not.
everything, it's all inclusive?
If it's attached to the land, so.
Is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the law. Anything attached to the land is really what you're receiving. So if nothing is attached, then you're just getting the
So
land.
that is the real estate?
Yeah,
That is-
if you build a house, like if I built a house on your lot, that house belongs to you, Jace, because the lot belongs to you.
Unless it's leasehold. That's a different
Okay,
scenario.
so-
I can only use it as long as you allow. I can
So
only
if-
use that house. It doesn't matter who spent the money. If
So
it
if
belongs
I'm
to you,
married
it's
into your
yours.
family, Gina, and you wanted to, like if you said, okay, I'm giving you the house, but not the land, technically I'd be your tenant, right? I wouldn't be a property owner at that point.
Well, so on the deed of gift, if I deed the property to you, and absolutely for love and affection, there's no monetary compensation involved,
I
right?
feel special today.
Well, it has to say that, because if you don't say that, then it becomes a little murky, and your attorneys are going to have to help you clear that up. But I deed the property to you, and it could be between from an aunt or an uncle to nieces and nephews, a parent to a child, brothers and sisters. It's meant for family members, right? But sometimes you're going to get a deed from a friend to a friend. But if I put in there that it's for love and affection, and I'm deeding the property to you as your sole and separate property, then you own that property separately. And so it is now yours whether you're married or not, and your spouse has no claim to it.
Okay,
because
can we talk about finances for a second there? Because if you have sole and separate property, right? How does this affect each party in let's say a married couple, right? How does it affect each of the spouses' credit score, and as soon as they assume
we're
ownership of the
ta-
property, how does it affect like their tax?
We're talking about gifts.
Okay.
So credit score isn't involved because you're
That's
not
why you have to
buying
indicate
it.
love and affection.
That's correct. I mean,
Ah.
you're getting a gift, and I assume that gift is free, right? So there is no credit score involved. I mean, I'm not going to ask my kids. I mean, it's a great idea. Perhaps you should see how financially stable they are, because once you have that gift, that piece of real estate, you have to pay taxes. If it's a home, you have to have maintenance.
And the next
So there are-
tax cycle, you would be obligated to cover the property tax for that.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good question. But what I wanted to point out is Liz talked about divorce, if in the event you get a divorce. In the event you stay together and you got this deed of gift, so you have a property that is now just yours, just mine, or just yours, Jason, but the intent is that your spouse, if something happens to me, it goes to my spouse, then you need to make an effort to change that deed after Liz deeds it to me. And my intent is my husband will have co-ownership of that property. So if something happens to me, it goes to my husband. I actually need to take an extra step after I receive that deed of gift to make sure he is or she is, if it's you, Jason, you want to make sure your wife's included. So if something happens to you, your spouse doesn't have to go to court and say, well, my wife or my husband owned this as their sole and separate property, and something's happened to them, they're deceased. So I would, I'm asking for the ownership of this property. So if that's your situation where you want to make sure your spouse gets the property that you were gifted from your family member, then you need to take an extra step and put their names on
You
the
should
deed.
do
final
you
word, Liz.
should do a quit claim deed. So if it's your sole and separate property, you should do the extra step, which is a quit claim deed from Jason Salas to Jason and Mrs. Salas, and then file that with land management. Then it becomes both your properties. So it's both entities would own the property.
Yet another
It's
reason
no
if you get
longer-
married to stay married, everybody.
Yeah. Well, then it'll
Love and affection.
no longer be yours. It'll be owned by both parties.
Okay, ladies, thank
Check
you.
with your attorneys, check with your escrow
Yes.
company. This has been our experience, and we're just sharing the
Sharing it.
information.
It's a musical reminder. Let's stay together. Sing with me now. It's good and bad, happy and sad. We'll be right back. I'm
Boy, he's got a
so
voice.
in love with you. We'll be
We're living in a new world with new ways of communicating, connecting, and moving through life.
Every day seems to be marked with change, and with all these changes, you need trusted people you can rely on for advice and insights about the things that really matter.
Let Gina and I walk you through everything you need to know about real estate, from buying to selling to renting, and all the details in between.
Join us with Jason Solis every week on House to Home.
House to Home every Tuesday on KOAM News Extra, presented by RE/MAX Diamond Realty.